afternoon. Today is Tuesday, the 28th of April, and today we have with us Dr. Nishant Shah and his father, Dr. Hasmukh Shah, along with Mugda and I, and we're here to speak about Dr. Nishu and Dr. Hasmukh's perspective on COVID-19. I know Nishu, who I'm going to call Nishu if that's okay with you, as a favorite cousin and someone who is a well-respected doctor in community. But I think I'm going to let him introduce himself because the reason we have Nishu speaking to the Embassy of India Student Hub is because about a week and a half ago, Nishu contracted COVID-19. So Nishu, how about first introducing yourself, and then I'd love to talk a little bit more about your experiences.
Thank you, Rupal. I'm glad to be here. My name is Nishant Shah. I'm a family medicine doctor, and I live in Baltimore, Maryland. And here in Baltimore, I do a couple different kinds of activities, but I work in women's health, and I work as an addiction medicine doctor. And throughout this experience, my family and I have been kind of like following COVID closely and participating in whatever way we can to help with the response. And I have a 7-year-old daughter at home, and my wife is a nurse in the emergency room at Johns Hopkins. And so we both have felt like we're on the front line of this epidemic since it started. Beyond that, I like to read books, I like to play music, I like to get outside and ride my bike, all kind of things that thankfully I've been able to continue to do throughout this COVID ordeal.
Nice. Let's come back and talk to you a little bit about kind of what it feels like to have COVID, but let me quickly have your father introduce himself. Dr. Hasmukh Shah, also my uncle, so I'm going to call you Hasmukh Kaka, if that's okay, is a senior physician who spent a lifetime practicing family medicine in rural America, and also has done a lot in the community, both in India and in the United States. And he is obviously the father of someone who also, which is Nishu, who has COVID. So Hasmukh Kaka, you want just a quick introduction of yourself?
Well, thanks Rupal for introducing me. I am Dr. Hasmukh Shah, a retired family physician, practiced pretty much 4 decades in the rural United States. And what I have done now since retiring in 2015, I have been traveling to India and now putting my time balance, having involved in a community throughout my practice. Initially practicing in a village to understand the culture and try to understand their needs and provide the need as a physician. Later on, I got more involved, especially after 9/11. At that time, there was quite a big panic, and we definitely worked together with interfaith group. And then onward, we started doing what we call a free clinic concept back in 1997 until I retired in 2014. Since that, I have decided to serve the country where I am born, which is India, and try to work there with a rural health project which has been done by a non-profit organization in India. So that's my introduction.
Okay, well, we'll come back to some of the cool things you're doing as well. Let's start with you, Nishu, and yeah, tell us what it's like to have COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of the fear around having COVID is just not knowing what it's going to be like, and hearing about how severe it can be, and kind of just seeing and experiencing what's going on through my own body. Honestly, I would say the experience has been pretty mild for me. It's been like a flu or like a viral infection that I might get, any year. And I woke up one morning on last Sunday and had chills and muscle aches. And that was really the main symptom that I had. I could tell it wasn't normal for me to feel that way, but it certainly didn't feel severe. And I think if it had been any other day or any other time, I probably would have just taken some Motrin or Tylenol and moved on with my day and not thought much about it. But knowing it was kind of COVID season and then I was working as a healthcare professional, I kind of watched myself for the whole day. And I would say, you know, slowly as I took my temperature throughout the day, my temperature slowly, gradually increased until I had kind of a fever by around like 4 o'clock in the afternoon that day. And once I knew I was not feeling well and I had a fever, I was pretty certain I contracted COVID somehow. The next couple of days was kind of a whirlwind. Part of it was being able to get tested. And as a healthcare worker, I'm in the risk category that's prioritized in my state for testing. So thankfully, I was able to call our local hospital, Johns Hopkins, and get myself tested quickly. And the same day, I got results, which I know isn't the experience for everyone, but really kind of in 6-7 hours, they gave me a phone call saying my test was positive. Over the next few days, I'd say probably I had another day or two of fevers and chills that were kind of keeping me in bed most of the day. But by the third or fourth day, just taking some Tylenol or acetaminophen in the morning and evening allowed me to kind of be up, do things, and kind of stay busy through the day. Part of having COVID for me, though, was quarantining. And so even though I started to feel well, I kind of from the day one had kept myself in one room in our house and didn't interact with my wife or daughter. It didn't leave the house. I thankfully have a small little patio off the back of my room so I can get a little bit of sunlight and outdoor time. But I would say it was probably by day 6 of the illness that I was feeling much better and felt like I had kind of turned the corner and was almost back to normal. So yeah, I mean, it was 6 days of kind of not feeling great, but the whole time I was able to eat, I was able to stay hydrated, drink fluids. And honestly, I felt well enough to do FaceTime and Zoom calls. So I was able to stay in touch with family and friends and keep myself at least occupied during that time.
We'll come back to all the great things you're doing to keep yourself occupied. You had mentioned before that you actually took your temperature pretty regularly and you could monitor sort of, you know, how your symptoms felt with your temperature rise. Can you just elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, normally if this had happened and it wasn't COVID, I would have just taken some Tylenol and Motrin and moved on. But knowing that COVID was around, I kind of have been keeping track of my temperature and how I've been feeling and kind of writing it down every day. So one of the things that I thought was fascinating personally was just knowing that my body is so sensitive to its temperature. When I woke up that Sunday morning, my temperature was 98.0, which is a perfectly normal temperature, but I wasn't feeling well. And every kind of small tick up in my temperature up to 98.8, 99, 100, 101, I could feel myself getting more sick. And each day I would take some Tylenol and see where my temperature was. But I could sense that around when my muscle ache started, I would check my temperature and it would be usually 98.5, 98.6. And that's kind of where my body kind of kicked into aches and chills and I would feel bad. And then if my temperature dropped down to kind of 98.0, 97 something, I would feel much better. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I've still been taking my temperature. Like my normal temperature is around 97.5, 97.6. And so that Fahrenheit 1 degree difference between 97.5 and 98.5 is enough for my body just to know that something's not right. And I thought that was just fascinating because it's rare that I take my temperature that regularly and that often to even know what my set point would be. But yeah. I think we all probably have a number that's like normal for us and like a number that our body starts to kick into illness mode.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'm glad that you're both so vigilant, but also so intrigued by the way that the symptoms work. You mentioned briefly something about the fear of having COVID. I know that you're young and healthy. You're in your 40s, and so perhaps in the other risk category isn't as much of a concern. But how did you cope with sort of the general anxiety in the world and the fear and the isolation actually from your family?
I think part of the fear was just not knowing that when things get worse, they seem to get worse quickly, is kind of what I've read. And so from either the experience that people have seen in the emergency room, you just hear stories about people feeling well, feeling mild, but then their oxygen level drops suddenly, kind of within a period of hours, and not days. And so I think that's different than what we normally experience with the flu, where people kind of little by little get a little bit worse every day, and they can tell they're kind of going down that path of getting sicker. So I think that was kind of my biggest fear, was that even though I was feeling mild, that kind of at any moment things could get much worse. And the other thing that was concerning to me was that I've been around my family, and I didn't know if and when they were going to get sick. And so part of it was just the concern that I wasn't feeling well. I didn't know when I was going to get better or get worse. And then the fear that at the same time my wife would get sick or my child would get sick. And then there's multiple people in our household who's sick, and we're all trying to kind of keep track of each other, but also make sure that we get better, So I think that's kind of part of the unknown, is you just don't know who else is going to get sick from you and who you got sick from. I think that's what's the hardest part too, is that thinking through all the places I was in terms of work, the people I was around. And thankfully I work in a situation where people weren't sick and people don't have symptoms. But even in that context, wearing a mask, washing my hands, using hand sanitizer, I still somehow contracted it. And whether that was in the workplace, at the grocery store, I mean, it's just hard to know. And I think that not knowing elevates the kind of anxiety and the fear of like, well, where did I get this from? Who did I give it to? And how, if I can't identify that, what does that say about its infectiousness,
Yeah,
kind of that uncertainty of it.
Yeah, that uncertainty seems to be catching a lot of people. Hasmukh, let me ask you to step in. I mean, when did you first hear that Nishu had COVID-19, and what was your reaction?
I think it was Sunday. Now every day is a Sunday. We are in the COVID-19 time. And it was Sunday where suddenly he did call. Anyway, we talked him quite often with our what we call FaceTime. And he did give the news that I have a fever and chills. Knowing as a physician, knowing that he is also in a healthcare field, we were pretty much certain that COVID has got him. And at that time, he already had decided to do quarantine himself. That was the one good. And yes, it is a natural reaction. As a parent, you feel the same discomfort your son or daughter is feeling. So that was being a physician and I knew what is coming and how we are going to deal with it. On the other side, my wife definitely took it somewhat more emotionally. And that is also natural.
She's a mom.
She's a mom, and she definitely has, as Nishu has said, it's a spectrum. You don't know. We just had news of some of other friends who had gone through that before and also on ventilator and is able to come out. But all of this thing comes to your mind screen, and you think about what we call unthinkable or think about the worst. The good thing for me is I'm always in that attitude that I always read, and my reading is confined, that how we can think positively. How can we see something which is a light of hope and not of despair. And that is where I also felt that yes, Nishu has told us he's that age that he can fight back very easily. He has a tool set home to monitor, including said I have a pulse oximetry. I was relieved that he has the needed tools right at home. And beside what I have talked before, I always have learned to remain calm and try to give a positive energy. And that is what I always have understood, in spite of, because as a physician, if you give up the hope, you are in the field to give the hope. So we both kind of went through for at least 72 hours, I can remember that we were in that kind of phase. Yes, once the news came out that positive, next day, I think so we were definitely for another 24 hours. But Nishu was very much, himself was positive.
Sure.
He always told us that I'm feeling, even though mom can tell that, oh, Nishu is not feeling good, he has a fever, chills. But with his attitude, we were at peace. So it's what I learned from being a parent, but same time, that you have to remain calm. You have to be somewhat more optimistic, and also definitely transmit that by all the way you talk, the way you see each other, the way you think, and the way you act.
Nice. I think that's actually central to both your personalities. So I'm not totally surprised that either of you are calm and positive spirits. What, Nisha, what have you been doing during this quarantine time? I mean, you're in a room by yourself. So what's that look like? What kinds of things keeping you busy?
I mean, thankfully, we have a safe, easy way for me to quarantine. So I have a bedroom that has its own bathroom and a patio, so I can get outside and get some fresh air, open the window. So that's been nice to have at least a little bit of space to move around. I would say the first couple of days, just not feeling well, it was really being in bed and lying down and resting and napping, and doing my best just to kind of like keep myself busy and binging on some Netflix to just get through the day, knowing that I wasn't feeling well enough to do much beyond that. After that, though, I've been grateful that I have some books to read and lots of people to check in by phone and FaceTime and Zoom meetings with family and friends. And so I surprised myself that I was able to read an entire book in one day, which I feel like, as hectic as life normally is, it takes me 6 weeks or 2 months of diligent trying, reading 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. But when you have 6 or 8 hours just to like read, you can actually just read a 400-page book without problem. It's amazing.
What book have you read? What books have you read?
It was called, the book that I just finished was called Professor Chandra Follows His Bliss, which was great. It's about a Indian expatriate living in England who finds himself after, a career of working really hard and estranging from his family to kind of rethink kind of what he's done in life and what he wants to do and how to reconnect with himself, really. So it was a fun book to read, and it was very funny, actually, in a lot of ways. So it was good and light humored. I always like to read something that's not fiction as well, and so I'm reading a book called How We Sleep that's just all about the ins and outs about how important sleep is to us. And as someone who does like to sleep and keeps my sleep protected, I have to say that it's nice and validating to hear that sleeping is a good thing for us in lots of different ways. And I read that book and fell asleep reading it many times this week. So I think that as a good sign. And so reading's been fun. I have a little yoga mat here in my room that as I've been feeling better, doing a little bit of yoga and trying to do a little bit of exercise just to see how my breathing does when I do exert myself. And then thankfully with Zoom, it's been great to reconnect with college friends, with medical school friends, with family, playing games on Zoom, celebrating people's birthdays on Zoom. So it's been like, I realized that quarantining now is probably the easiest time in history ever to have to quarantine because everything's at the touch of your fingers. I can FaceTime, I can Zoom, I can check in with people, and have all that right at my fingertips. So that's been very, very helpful.
That's awesome. So give me, sometimes there is a philosophy that says almost nothing that happens or that, that you read is totally by chance. So if you could take a takeaway from both of your books that, sort of you sit with as being interesting coming up to you at this time, what would that be?
I think on the sleep book, what I think is fascinating is the week before I got sick, I'd been doing a lot of evening conference calls and participating in work groups and things, and probably staying up till 11:30, 12, and then falling asleep and waking up. And so just the need of your body to sleep, to fight infections, to stay healthy, and just that little bit to me was just like that wake up call of like, oh yeah, of course, the week before when I'm not sleeping as much as I normally do, here I go and I get sick. So I definitely felt like that was like a good just reminder of how important.
And didn't you tell me before that you thought that the book almost said that we prioritize waking time over sleep, whereas the book almost said the opposite, that it actually.
Oh, yeah.
Can you share that line? I thought that was always quite funny.
What's great is the author writes just from the perspective of this question about like why we sleep, right? And I think he's like, historically, everyone thinks of sleep as just the time that our brain rests, right? And the important activity that we do is think and make decisions and pay attention all day. But he says kind of from an evolutionary point of view, everybody sleeps, right? And every species sleeps, and universally it's a protected thing. And so he's like, the better scientific question is like, why did we ever wake up, right? If it's this really important preserved thing through evolution that does all these wonderful things for us, like what's the point of keeping us awake, and why don't we all sleep 22 hours a day and instead of 8 hours, right? What's the benefit to it? And so I think it's neat because he writes from that perspective of like, well, what's the point of being awake knowing that this is such a valuable, important thing to us? So I thought that was hilarious how he phrased it.
I think that's pretty funny. Though your dad probably has a different sense of what it means to be awake. So we'll have to touch base with him in a second about what it means to actually wake up. And then the other book, you have a takeaway from Dr. Chandra?
What I love about it is it's kind of it's a great story about the Indian diaspora, right? And like the professor who's achieved all the accomplishments he can think of in his field and yet still feels disappointed, in what he's able to do. And I think what's great about it is there's this scene where he goes to kind of a meditation retreat place and they're sitting around and essentially they're looking at people they don't know and they just have to like be honest about what they think and say what they think, right? And the whole conversation kind of devolves into people making judgments of other people and being very judgmental towards everyone else in the room, right? And everyone gets angry and frustrated from it. And he steps outside after the activity, but it allows him to kind of like see his faults for what they are and to be honest and true towards himself, right? And I think when he does that, he feels good about it. And he feels good that he was able to kind of say to himself where he's failed and what's his fault and what's not his fault. And he just feels relieved to finally say it, and after 70 years of living, he's never thought about like why he is who he is and why he's gotten to this point and what's gotten him there. And I think being able to just kind of honestly take stock of himself, I think gave him a sense of relief more than distress. And I think that's like something that I think we all can kind of learn to be okay with, that we're not perfect, but just being able to be honest with ourselves. And even in our optimism, even in our positivity, like it's okay to be angry and frustrated and disappointed and sad, and letting those emotions kind of be honest when they need to be there.
It's fascinating because a lot of people are seeing this time as an opportunity for self-reflection, right? And maybe an assessment of both on a personal level, but maybe also on a societal level of how we've chosen to live. So interesting that that book brings that up for you. How about, I'm gonna ask both of you. Actually, Hasmukh, what are you reading?
Oh,
What's
I just come across the two great books, and one of them is written by a very known physicist, is called Until the End of Time. It's written by a very well-known physicist, Brian Greene. And another book is called Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. Yes, as books I always read, and one of them has something to do with inner development. Other one is always I go into field of science. But at the same time, I always have two other parts. One is spirituality and something which we call belief system or religion. I always fascinated all along, but since I am retired, and now with COVID-19, not only retired, you are confined. You have ample time to go within you and do what we call a self-reflection. So I understood some of the words which we use, word called yoga, meditation. Now it has taken a deeper meaning. And that deeper meaning gives us who I am. And that makes me feel more happy from within me. So when I have gone through this time, I always want to share it and spread it. The joy, feeling of happiness from within. And now with the warmer weather is coming up and they at least allow us to go out for a walk, that has really given a time to do self-reflection out in the open, in the nature. And then you become more and more appreciative of the things around you, not only in the house, but outside, the tree and singing of the birds, and suddenly the spring is in the air. So you really feel, and before you are so much in that mind thought process that you do not experience. So I think so this time has given me to experience. Now these books have really, I don't go that fast as Nisu likes to go in a day. My books are here on the table from 6 weeks and I'm still halfway. It looks like that it takes longer time for me to digest than him.
Okay, well, we'll wait and ask you about what you've learned from those in another 6 weeks, give you a little more time to digest. I was gonna maybe two more questions and then maybe you have some for us or maybe Mugdha has some questions. One, from your experience with COVID or even just your experience in isolation, do you have advice for others, either on just how to be safe or how to use their time well?
I mean, I think one of the things that I've tried to use this time for, just COVID in general, not just being sick, but just kind of being at home and having things shut down, is really rethinking for myself, what was I doing and why was I doing it? Right? I think oftentimes so much of what I was doing was autopilot, you know, and whether it's getting up, dropping my daughter off to school, the type of work I was doing, the way in which you just kind of like spend your day traveling, how you kind of try to connect with people or not, and just being able to take a step back and really asking yourself, like, what's important and what do I want to do? You know, and now that you have work from home and, you know, you're with your family all day, every day, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, we never made time to like play board games as a family. So let's start playing board games, or let's, have activities, or even just spending time to yourself and thinking about exercise and meditation and sleep and cooking and baking together and all the different activities that you kind of didn't have time for, but you probably did. And now it's like, yeah, now that the time is all yours, what do you really want to spend it doing? And I think just being in that mindset of every moment is precious, and it's not the situation we asked for, and we probably wouldn't have chosen the COVID situation to bring us at home, but all of a sudden now I've got amazing time with family and the ability to reconnect with friends and cousins and family on Zoom that I probably took for granted that people were out there, but I never reached out. And now it's like we're singing everyone happy birthday together, which is great. It's like I want everyone on my birthday to phone in on Zoom too. Why not? So I think it's just a neat way to kind of rethink about what we're prioritizing, and then knowing that we now have the ability to make that happen. A lot of us are in that position where we can choose to do things differently. So it's our opportunity to lose if we don't.
It's nice. And Hasmukh, you said that there were like 5 things that if we paid attention to in terms of like our health, that we could possibly stay physically at least well. What, do you have that list of 5, or is there more that you would add?
Yeah, well, basically, before I go to that, what Nishu brought, very important. For me, this is a kind of eureka moment. If I look at that. Going back to 2018, I picked up the book on Stoic philosophy, then which made me to write a diary for year 2019, a daily journal. It has really kind of made me calmer and take it easy. So when this year I make a trip for 3 months in India, I remain calm. No need to plan much more ahead. And every experience, myself and my wife, we had a great experience. Even whatever undertaking we had, we enjoyed it. And when we came here, 2019 was ending, and I just happened to be at Delhi airport and pick up the book on living with Bhagavad Gita. So that inspired me to go ahead and write on that. So I picked up the journal and writing in Gujarati. Hey, I never write in Gujarati normally journal, but that's hey, I'll write in Gujarati, but I'll definitely do that. And did it for 6 weeks in India. And after coming here, COVID is here. And that really made me much more, as Nishu has said now, and you really look at everything with a different perspective. Not the perspective I have looked at it now, that we have come closer, myself and my wife. I get up, I decided to definitely be a part of her morning routine in her kitchen. And she is in the morning routine with me doing some yoga. We also do a lot of things together, whether cleaning the house or going for a walk. So previously we stayed in our own cocoon, but that we have reduced the time spending in the cocoon. So that is amazing that how this time has made us. Not only that, I think so, that you understand each other. So mainly I think that it is the best time to come closer, learn to kind of know each other and enjoy each moment. So the whole question of awareness, it comes into picture. Previously, as Nishu said, that you are just in an autopilot and a lot of things just go by and you don't even know it has happened. Now, everything we are aware of it. Even going to the grocery store is also, you are fully aware. You remember that, yes, I went last Tuesday at noon, and that's amazing.
Yeah. No, that's true. You're right. That we take the simple things are much more, yeah, we're a little more centered and present for those.
So one of the last thing what you mentioned about is that I'm talking to quite a few friends of mine, and many of them are above 70, and we can look at it. What makes them to fear most? First thing is that you are constantly thinking about COVID-19.
Hmm.
A lot of other things to think about. Sometimes when you think about it, it becomes thought, and you always think about. Just like if you have think about accident, you always think about everybody pick up the phone. Are you okay? So that's one thing that where you spend your thinking mind. So watching TV has to be reduced to just get a morning and evening data. The second part, they have given very simple, and this is the old principles of preventive health care, and that comes of personal hygiene, and that washing your hands. Keeping a social distance always been there in one way. And yes, greatest Indian tradition was to do namaste and not to hug people whom you don't know. The third part, which was very, that you do not run around, reduce the unnecessary travel. And I was so happy that I had no program or no traveling plan that I have bought the tickets for 2020. So that's one of the things which is a very important part of it. Now, as far as keeping yourself healthy and happy, you have a set routine where Nishu said, getting a good sleep, hydrating yourself, getting yourself exercise, and try to think about of how I can be of helpful to others. A lot of time we always think about me and mine, me and mine. But this is where you actually, they all are contributing to have your body's health. As the sleep is important, so is when daytime, when you are awake, you basically think about other people and sending the positive vibrations.
That's awesome. I'm going to have you, thank you for both of your thoughts and reflections. I'm going to have you both end with either a song. Nishu, I'm going to encourage you, if you feel well enough, to sing us a song. Go get your guitar if you have it, or just sing, because I know you do a cappella. And Hasmukh with either a phrase, a song, or something that you've learned from your reflections on the Gita, because it sounds like it's been an important part of this COVID experience for you. So, an invitation to end how you like, in the spirit that you otherwise live.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh, Nishu, you're muted.
Hey, put on the spot for a song. All right. Let me think if I can find one for you. Let me think. Oh man, of course I'm going blank.
Can you just sing the Bob Marley song the other day for us? The Everything's Gonna Be All Right. Was that? Did I make that up?
We could certainly we could certainly sing that. That's a good one.
You had a great voice on that one. Whatever, yeah. Your choice. It doesn't matter.
What is it? Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right. But baby, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be all right now. There you go.
Yay. We'll take it. And Hasmukh, you want either a song or even just a line or two? I actually think some of your reflections would be really great to end on.
Yeah, I mean, one of the songs which I have always come and have been inspired is a few lines of it. It's in Gujarati, but you will understand that Ruti ritu banave maru hridaya tu chalave चेतना प्रवाह अंग अंग वहावे रुधिर तू बनावे मारू हृदय तू चलावे चेतना प्रवाह अंग अंग वहावे. It's a very deep meaning, but then you become an instrument, and that is the Gita's message ultimately, that if you become an instrument of a universal force, you perform without expectation and without a particular kind of result, and you just are free or liberated at a given moment. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you all. Mugdha, anything to add? That was lovely. So grateful for the opportunity both just to spend some time in your presence, but also to have you share your experiences, your thinking, and just your beautiful, beautiful messages for all of our students at the India Student Hub.